I watched my mother slide the deed across the mahogany table, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the paper with practiced impatience. "Sign it, Elena. Your sister needs this apartment more than you do." My hand hovered over the document, trembling. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our family's penthouse, I could see the building that housed my apartment. The only thing I'd ever truly owned. Unit 407. 700 square feet of freedom that I'd bought with my own money. Money I'd saved from working 3 jobs while putting myself through college. "But Mom, that's my home. Don't be dramatic." Victoria, my older sister, didn't even look up from her phone. Her diamond engagement ring caught the afternoon light, throwing prismatic patterns across the ceiling. "Marcus and I need somewhere to live after the wedding. Your little studio is perfect for us to start out." "It's a 1-bedroom, I whispered, though I knew it didn't matter. Nothing I said ever mattered. "Then you can sleep on the couch at your place," my father added, not looking up from his newspaper. "You're used to making do." My stepmother, I refused to call her mom anymore, not even in my head, pursed her lips. "Really, Elena? After everything we've done for you? We raised you, fed you, gave you a roof over your head. The least you can do is help your sister." The pen felt like lead in my hand. I looked around the room at the family I'd spent 26 years trying to please. My father, who'd remarried 6 months after my mother died and never mentioned her again. His new wife, who'd moved in with her daughter Victoria and systematically erased every trace of me from family photos. Victoria herself, golden-haired and cruel, who'd stolen my first boyfriend, my college acceptance letter, even my grandmother's necklace, the only thing I had left of my real mother, and they wanted my apartment. "If you don't sign," Victoria finally looked up, her blue eyes cold, "Dad's cutting you off. No more family dinners, no more emergency money. You'll be completely alone." I almost laughed. I'd been alone for 16 years, ever since the day Dad brought them home. But the threat still worked because some pathetic part of me still hoped that if I was good enough, compliant enough, they might love me the way they loved Victoria. So I signed. I signed my apartment away to my sister, and I told myself it was fine. I'd find another place. I always found a way to survive. That was 3 months ago in my previous life. 3 months before Victoria's engagement party, where they'd served champagne and crystal flutes, and I'd been relegated to coat check duty. 3 months before I'd overheard my stepmother telling her friends that I was charity work, a burden they'd shouldered out of obligation to my dead mother. 3 months before I'd left that party, numb and hollow, and stepped into traffic without looking. The truck driver said he never saw me, the doctor's buzz, said I died instantly. But I remember those last moments with crystal clarity, the screech of brakes, the impact, the strange floating sensation as I watched my body from above. I remember seeing Victoria at my funeral crying perfectly photogenic tears while wearing my grandmother's necklace. I remember my father's eulogy, which spent more time talking about his own grief than anything about me. And then I woke up. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, in the body of my 18-year-old self, 8 years before that pen signing, 8 years before I stepped in front of that truck. The calendar on my wall read June 15th, the day after my high school graduation, the day before I was supposed to start my summer job at the grocery store. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then I thought I was crazy. But as the days passed and the memories of both timelines solidified in my mind, I realized something impossible had happened. I'd been given a second chance, and this time, I wasn't going to waste it being their victim. But let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here, so you understand why what I'm about to do is justice, not cruelty. My real mother died when I was 10, breast cancer. She fought for 2 years, and I watched her waste away in hospital beds while Dad worked longer and longer hours. Toward the end, she made him promise to take care of me, to make sure I knew I was loved. He held her hand and swore he would. He kept that promise for exactly 6 months. Then he met Cheryl at some corporate mixer. She was a decade younger than him, beautiful in a sharp-edged way, with a daughter exactly 2 years older than me. Victoria was everything I wasn't: tall, blonde, effortlessly graceful. She wore her privilege like a second skin. They moved in quickly, too quickly. Suddenly, my childhood home was filled with strangers, and I was expected to play happy family. Victoria got the bigger bedroom, mine actually, the one with the window seat Mom and I had picked out together. I got moved to the smaller guest room. Cheryl redecorated everything in whites and grays, erasing the warm colors Mom had loved. The photos of my mother disappeared from the walls, boxed up and shoved into the attic. "Fresh start," Cheryl said brightly when I asked where they'd gone. "We're a new family now." I learned quickly that in this new family, I was the odd one out. Victoria needed a new laptop for school. Dad bought it without question. I needed a new laptop because mine broke? Maybe I should get a part-time job and save up. Victoria wanted to try competitive dance. They paid for private lessons and a professional costume. I wanted to join the photography club. The membership fee was too expensive, and besides, wasn't I being selfish asking for extras? The favoritism wasn't even subtle. It was blatant, systematic, designed to put me in my place. And my place, I learned, was as far beneath Victoria as possible. When we both applied to the same college, I worked my ass off. I studied every night, joined every extracurricular I could afford, volunteered at the hospital where Mom had died. I earned a full academic scholarship to State University, a complete ride, tuition and fees, and even a stipend for housing. Victoria failed her entrance exam. I found my acceptance letter torn into pieces in my trash can. When I confronted Cheryl, she didn't even try to hide it. Victoria was so upset about her rejection. Seeing your acceptance lying around was just rubbing salt in the wound. You understand, don't you, Elena? Family supports each other. I requested another letter from the school. Dad found it and strongly suggested, that I defer for a year. Let Victoria try again. You don't want to make her feel bad, do you? I went anyway. I packed my things and left, using the stipend money for a dorm room far away from them. For one glorious year, I was free. Then the money stopped coming. The school's financial aid office was apologetic but firm. My scholarship had been transferred to another student, Victoria, who'd appealed using my essay, my transcripts, my volunteer work. Somehow she'd convinced them she was me or I was her or something. The paperwork was a mess, but the result was clear. She got the money, I got nothing. When I called Dad, he told me that Victoria needed it more. She was struggling, he said. She had so much potential. I was smart. I'd figure something out, so I did. I worked 3 jobs while taking classes. I slept 4 hours a night. I lived on ramen and graduated with honors and no help from anyone. I was proud of that in my previous life. I'd survived, but I hadn't thrived. I'd been so busy surviving that I never built anything for myself. The apartment, Unit 407, was the first thing I'd managed to buy at age 25 after years of saving every penny. 1 bedroom, outdated kitchen, but it was mine. Completely mine. Until they took it, because that's what they did. They took and took and took, and I let them because I was too desperate for their approval to say no. Victoria got engaged to Marcus, a real estate developer's son with more money than sense. They needed a starter place while Marcus's trust fund matured. Dad suggested my apartment. Cheryl insisted it was only right that I help my sister. And I, pathetic and hopeful, signed it away. 2 weeks after I signed, I found out Victoria was already planning to flip it. She and Marcus were going to renovate and sell it for 3 times what I'd paid, using the profit for a down payment on a real house. They'd never intended to live there at all. I confronted her at the engagement party. She laughed in my face. "What are you going to do about it? Sue me? With what money? Face it, Elena, you're a doormat. You always have been." That's when I left. That's when I stepped into traffic. That's when I died. And that's when I woke up 8 years earlier with all my memories intact and a burning desire to rewrite my story. The first thing I did was secure my mother's necklace. It was still in her jewelry box in Dad's closet, waiting to be distributed after some imaginary proper mourning period. I took it and hid it somewhere Cheryl would never find it. The second thing I did was check the news. I remembered that in my first life, that summer when I was 18, a massive scandal had broken out. A local real estate developer, Marcus's father actually, had been caught in a fraud scheme. His company had been buying up properties using shell corporations, artificially inflating prices, then selling to unsuspecting buyers at enormous markups. The whole operation collapsed by August, and several people went to prison. In my previous life, I'd barely noticed. I'd been too busy working at the grocery store earning money for college supplies. This time, I paid attention. I spent my grocery store wages not on college supplies, but on something else. Legal consultation. I found a hungry young lawyer fresh out of law school who was willing to work for cheap because he needed to build his portfolio. His name was David Chen, and he was brilliant. You want to buy property? He looked skeptical. You're 18, Shiaz. I want to create a trust, I corrected. Can you help me? I told him about my mother's life insurance policy. In my previous life, Dad had kept that money for my education, which really meant Cheryl had redecorated the house twice. This time, I knew the exact amount, $200,000, and I knew that legally, it was mine. Mom had been smart enough to make me the direct beneficiary, not Dad. David helped me file the paperwork to access it. Dad hit the roof, but there was nothing he could do. The money was legally mine, and I was legally an adult. Cheryl cried and told me I was ungrateful. Victoria called me a bitch. I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what they thought. With David's help, I set up a trust and started watching the real estate market like a hawk. I watched Marcus's father's company buy properties all over the city. I watched the prices creep up. And I waited. The building where my apartment had been, was called Riverside Towers. It was a decent mid-rise in an up-and-coming neighborhood. In my previous life, I'd bought Unit 407 when I was 25. The building had been owned by a small property management company that treated tenants fairly. But I remembered something else. I remembered that 2 years before I bought my apartment, Riverside Towers had been for sale. The original owners wanted to retire, and they'd listed the whole building for $2.3 million, a steal considering the location and the rental income. But it was a brief listing, pulled after just 3 weeks because they'd accepted an offer. In my previous life, that offer had come from Marcus's father's company. They'd run it into the ground with poor management and predatory practices, then sold it again. 5 years later, at a huge markup to the company I eventually bought my apartment from. This time, things would be different. I waited until the exact week I knew the building would be listed. Then I made my move. The problem was I didn't have enough money. Even with Mom's insurance and my savings, I had maybe $15,000. The building cost $2.3 million. That's when I remembered something else from my previous life, something I'd overheard at Victoria's engagement party when I'd been standing unnoticed near a group of Marcus's father's business associates. They'd been laughing about the Riverside deal, about how they'd lowballed the original owners by offering cash and closing fast. We told them we'd close in 2 weeks, no inspection, no contingencies. They were desperate to retire and move to Florida. They took $1.9 million for a building worth $3. $1.9 million. Still more than I had, but closer. I went back to David. I need to find investors. He looked at me like I was insane. You're 18 years old. No one's going to invest with you. They will if we give them a good enough deal. I pulled out my research. This neighborhood is about to explode. The new metro line is coming through in 3 years. Property values are going to triple. We buy this building now, manage it properly, and in 5 years we'll be sitting on a gold mine. How do you know all this? I couldn't exactly tell him I'd lived it before. I do my research. It took 6 weeks, but David found 3 investors willing to take a chance. A retired teacher looking to diversify her pension, a young couple wanting rental income, and David himself, who kicked in $50,000 of student loan money he'd been saving for a house down payment. Together, we formed Riverside Holdings, LLC. I contributed my $215,000 and became the managing partner with 40% ownership. The investors held the rest with a structured agreement that allowed me to buy them out over time. We made our offer on August 3rd, $1.9 million cash, 2-week close, no contingencies. The sellers accepted the next day. On August 17th, 3 days before Marcus's father's company collapsed in scandal, I became the owner of Riverside Towers, all 48 units, including Unit 407. I was 18 years old, technically a college freshman, and I owned an apartment building. Dad lost his mind. He showed up at the building with Cheryl and Victoria, demanding to know where I'd gotten the money. When I told him about Mom's life insurance, Cheryl actually screamed at me. That money was meant to be shared with the family. Your father needed that for Victoria's education. Mom left it to me, I said calmly. I was standing in the building's lobby, my building's lobby, and I'd never felt more powerful. It's mine, I used it how I wanted. You're going to lose everything, Victoria sneered. You don't know anything about running a building. You'll be bankrupt in 6 months. Maybe, I agreed, but it'll be my bankruptcy, not yours. They left threatening to never speak to me again. I considered that a bonus. Running the building was hard at first. I was starting college and learning property management simultaneously. But I had David, who handled the legal side, and I had something more valuable. I had memories of how Riverside Towers would be run into the ground by Marcus's father's company, and I knew exactly what not to do. I kept rents reasonable, I did repairs promptly, I vetted tenants carefully, I built relationships with local contractors and got good rates on maintenance. I lived in Unit 407 myself, saving money on housing while staying connected to my investment. By the time I was 20, the building was thriving. I'd bought out one of my investors and was up to 60% ownership. The neighborhood was gentrifying exactly as I'd predicted, and my property value was climbing. By the time I was 23, I owned the building outright. I'd refinanced, bought out the remaining investors, and paid David back with generous interest. The building was worth $4.5 million, and it was 100% mine. I barely spoke to my family during those years. They'd occasionally reach out when they needed something, money, usually, or a favor. I always said no. Victoria graduated college on my stolen scholarship and moved in with Marcus, whose family had miraculously avoided prosecution in his father's scandal. Dad and Cheryl kept living in their house, their lifestyle slowly declining as Dad's career stagnated and medical bills piled up. I didn't gloat. I just lived my life, managed my building, and waited. Because I knew what was coming. I knew that when I turned 26, Victoria would get engaged to Marcus. I knew they'd be looking for a place to live, and I knew that in my previous life they'd taken my apartment. This time, they'd have to ask nicely. The engagement happened right on schedule. Victoria called me for the first time in 2 years, her voice sugary sweet. Elena, oh my God, I have the best news. Marcus proposed. Congratulations, I said neutrally. We're having a party next month at the country club. You should come. It's been so long since we've all been together. I'll think about it. Oh, and Elena? Her voice dropped, becoming more businesslike. Marcus and I are looking for a place to live. Just temporarily while we look for our forever home. We were thinking, doesn't your building have vacancies? Maybe you could give us a good rate? Family discount? There it was, right on time. I'll have to check availability, I said. Send me an email with what you're looking for. She sent the email within an hour. They wanted a 2-bedroom updated with parking, and they wanted it for $500 a month, about a third of market rate. I responded professionally. I had a 2-bedroom available, Unit 312. Market rate was $1,800 a month. For family, I could do $1,600 with first and last month's rent plus security deposit up front. Victoria called me immediately, furious. Are you serious? You're going to charge your own sister market rate? Yes, I said simply, meh. After everything this family has done for you? I almost laughed. What exactly has this family done for me, Victoria? We raised you. We gave you a home. Dad raised me. It was his legal obligation. You and Cheryl moved in and made my life hell. You're such a victim. Fine. We'll find somewhere else. They tried. I knew they would. But the market had gotten expensive, and they didn't want to live anywhere that wasn't trendy. 3 weeks later, Victoria called again. We'll take Unit 312, but we're not paying $1,600. That's robbery. Then don't take it. There was a long pause. Then she tried a different tactic. Cheryl's been having health problems. Did you know that? Dad's insurance barely covers anything. They're struggling, Elena. The least you could do is help them out by giving us a fair rent. I'm giving you exactly the same rent I give everyone else. That's the definition of fair. I can't believe you're being this heartless. Fine, we'll pay your ridiculous rent, but I want a lease with the option to buy. This building isn't for sale. Everything's for sale for the right price. Not to you. I hung up. They took the apartment anyway. They had no choice. Everywhere else was either more expensive or in neighborhoods Victoria considered beneath her. They signed a 1-year lease, paid the deposits, and moved in. I was a model landlord. When the dishwasher broke, I had it replaced within 24 hours. When they complained about noise from upstairs, I addressed it immediately. I gave them absolutely no reason to complain. But I also gave them no special treatment. When rent was late, they got the same late fee notice as everyone else. When they asked to switch parking spots to somewhere more convenient, I told them the spots were assigned by seniority and they'd have to wait. When Marcus put a scratch in the hallway wall moving furniture, I charged them for the repair. "You're being petty," Victoria accused me when I sent her the $150 invoice for painting. "I'm being consistent. Every tenant gets charged for damage." "We're not every tenant. We're family." "Then maybe you should act like it." 6 months into their lease, Victoria started the campaign in earnest. She called family meetings at Dad's house, not mine, because I was too successful to bother with them now. She painted me as greedy, cold, mercenary. She told stories about how I'd stolen Mom's insurance money, how I'd refused to help when they needed it, how I charged them excessive rent for a barely habitable apartment. Dad called me trying the disappointed father routine. "Elena, honey, family takes care of family. Your mother would be so sad to see you acting this way." "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't you dare use Mom to manipulate me. She left me that money because she knew you'd remarry and forget about me. She was protecting me. And she was right." "That's not fair. You gave Victoria my bedroom. You paid for her college with my scholarship money. You asked me to hand over my apartment to her. When have you ever protected me?" He had no answer. Cheryl tried next. She invited me to lunch, just the two of us. I went, curious to see what angle she'd take. She went with guilt. "I know I was never the mother you needed. I know Victoria and I came into your life during a difficult time, but we're still family, Elena. And Victoria is struggling. Marcus's business isn't doing well, and they're barely making rent. If they get evicted, it'll ruin their credit. Don't you care about your sister's future?" "Why should I?" I asked. She's never cared about mine." "She's your family." "So why does family only work one direction? Why am I expected to sacrifice for Victoria, but she never has to sacrifice for me?" Cheryl had no answer either. The real test came when their lease was up for renewal. I sent them the standard renewal notice. Rent would increase to $1,750 in line with the market. They could renew for another year or give 60 days notice. Victoria showed up at my door, Unit 407, the apartment I still lived in, the apartment that in another timeline would have been hers. "We need to talk." "Make an appointment with the building manager." "Elena, cut the corporate bullshit. We can't afford $1,750. We need you to freeze our rent." "That's not how rental markets work." "Make an exception. We're family." "You keep saying that like it means something." She looked around my apartment, the apartment I'd bought with my own money in my previous life, the apartment she'd tried to steal, the apartment that existed now in a timeline where I'd outmaneuvered her at every turn. "You know what your problem is?" Victoria's voice was cold. "Yeah. You think you're better than us now. You got lucky with some investment, and now you're too good for your own family." "Lucky," I repeated. I worked 3 jobs putting myself through college with no help from anyone. I researched markets and took risks. I built this. There was no luck involved. You're going to regret this. When you need family, we won't be there. You've never been there, I said. That's not a threat. It's a relief. They refused to renew at the increased rate. Fine, I had a waiting list of potential tenants. I sent them the 60-day notice as required by law. That's when things got ugly. Marcus tried to pull some legal maneuvering, claiming their lease had an automatic renewal clause. It didn't. David had written all my leases personally, but Marcus paid a lawyer to file paperwork anyway, trying to tie things up in court. David crushed it in a week. The judge looked at the clear, straightforward lease, looked at Marcus's spurious claims, and ruled in my favor. Marcus was ordered to pay my legal fees. Victoria tried the social media angle. She posted about her cruel landlord sister who was kicking out family. She painted herself as the victim, Marcus as the struggling young professional, me as the heartless property owner. It might have worked, except several of my other tenants saw her posts and responded with their own stories. Stories about how I'd let them pay rent late during emergencies, how I'd upgraded their appliances without raising rent, how I'd organized building events and created a real community. One tenant posted a picture of Victoria's apartment after they moved out. They'd destroyed the place, leaving holes in walls, stains on carpets, even a broken cabinet door. "This is who you're defending," the tenant wrote. "A spoiled brat who treats property like garbage and expects special treatment." The social media campaign collapsed. Victoria deleted everything. Dad tried the legal route too. He found some obscure law about family obligations and tried to sue me for failing to support my sister. David had that thrown out even faster than Marcus's lease claim. Finally, desperately, they tried to buy the building. Marcus approached me with an offer, $5 million, all cash, close in 30 days. It was a good offer. The building was worth about $5.2 million odd at that point. But I knew something Marcus didn't know, something I remembered from my previous life. The new metro line was breaking ground next month. It would be done in 2 years. When it opened, this neighborhood would explode. Property values would double, maybe triple. "Not interested," I said. $7 million. "No. $10 million. That's my final offer. $10 million. For a building I'd bought for $1.9 million 6 years ago. In my previous life, I would have died before ever seeing that kind of money." "No," I said again. "This building isn't for sale." Marcus's face turned purple. "You're doing this to punish Victoria." "I'm doing this because I'm a good investor." "But if it also means Victoria doesn't get what she wants?" I smiled. "That's just a bonus." The 60 days ran out. Victoria and Marcus hadn't found another place, or more likely hadn't tried. They thought I'd cave at the last minute. I didn't. On the 61st day, I had the sheriff's department serve them with an eviction notice. They had 24 hours to vacate. Victoria called me crying, real tears this time, not the pretty ones she'd cried at my funeral in another life. "Elena, please, we have nowhere to go. You've had 60 days. We can't afford anywhere else." "That's not my problem." "What happened to you? You used to be kind. You used to care." I thought about that, about the me she'd known, the doormat who'd let herself be walked over for years. The me who'd signed away her apartment because she was desperate for approval. The me who'd died alone and unmourned. "I grew up," I said. I learned that being kind to people who only take advantage isn't kindness, it's stupidity. "Please, one more month, just one more month and we'll find something." "No, I'm your sister. You've never treated me like a sister. Why should I start now?" I hung up. They didn't leave voluntarily. The sheriff had to physically remove them on the second day. They'd trashed the apartment in a final act of spite, broken everything they could break, poured paint on the carpets, even torn the fixtures out of the bathroom. The damage totaled $15,000. I sued them for it and won. They couldn't pay, so the court garnished Marcus's wages. His father's company had never fully recovered from the scandal years ago, and Marcus's own business ventures kept failing. They didn't have the money. They had to declare bankruptcy. Dad and Cheryl's house went into foreclosure shortly after. Dad's medical issues had gotten worse, and without help from Marcus's family money, which didn't exist anymore, they couldn't keep up with the bills. They'd remortgaged several times over the years to fund Victoria's lifestyle, and now it was all coming due. They called me, of course, begging for help, a loan, anything. I said no. But we're family, Cheryl cried. You can't just abandon family. You're right, I agreed. Yitin, you can't, but I'm not abandoning you. I was never your family, not really. You made that clear 16 years ago when you threw away my mother's pictures and gave my bedroom to Victoria. You made it clear when you stole my scholarship money, when you tried to take my apartment, when you treated me like I was nothing. We raised you when you housed me. It's not the same thing. They lost the house. Last I heard, they were living in a rental on the other side of town. Dad's health continued to decline. Cheryl had to take a job at a department store. Victoria and Marcus moved in with them, unable to afford rent anywhere else after the bankruptcy. I felt nothing watching their collapse. Not satisfaction, not guilt. Just a strange sense of completion. The metro line opened on schedule. Property values in my neighborhood tripled within 6 months. Riverside Towers was now worth $17 million. I got offers almost daily from developers wanting to buy. I turned them all down. I bought 3 more buildings over the next 2 years. David became my full-time legal counsel and CFO. We expanded into property management, taking on other buildings for owners who wanted the steady income without the work. The business grew. By the time I was 30, I had a real estate portfolio worth over $50 million. I had a staff of 20. I had a reputation as one of the best property managers in the city. Fair but firm, honest but unbending. I wore my mother's necklace every day. One afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Elena? The voice was old, shaky. Dad, it's your father. I know. I'm calling because I need to tell you something. I'm sick, really sick. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months. I waited. I wanted to apologize for everything. You were right. I failed you. After your mother died, I was so lost that I let Cheryl take over. I let Victoria become the priority. I forgot that you needed me too, and I'm sorry. Part of me, the part that was still that desperate 10-year-old girl, wanted to cry, wanted to forgive him, wanted to say it was okay, but it wasn't okay. Thank you for the apology, I said, but it doesn't change anything. I know, I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And if I could go back... But you can't, I interrupted. Nobody can go back. You have to live with your choices, just like I have to live with mine. Will you come see me? Before... I thought about it. Really thought about it. In my previous life, I would have gone running. I would have spent his final months trying to earn some deathbed blessing, some final acknowledgement that I mattered. But I wasn't that person anymore. No, I said. I don't think I will. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up. He died 4 months later. Cheryl called to tell me about the funeral. I didn't go. I sent flowers, a small arrangement, appropriate but not lavish. The card read simply, "In memory of the man you could have been." Victoria tried to contest the will. There wasn't much left to contest. Dad died with more debts than assets, but she tried anyway, arguing that I should have to contribute to funeral expenses since I clearly had the money. The court laughed her out of the room. I heard through the grapevine that Victoria and Marcus eventually divorced. He'd had an affair with his secretary, the same way his father had had affairs, the same way the whole rotten family operated. Victoria moved back in with Cheryl, and they both worked retail jobs, barely scraping by. I could have helped them. I had more than enough money, but I didn't. Because some people don't deserve redemption. Some people deserve to live with the consequences of their cruelty, and some people like me, deserve to be free. I'm 34 now. I own 12 buildings across the city. My company manages 40 more. I employ over 100 people, and I'm known for treating them fairly, paying them well, promoting from within. I've started a scholarship fund for first-generation college students who've lost a parent. It's named after my mother. I still live in Unit 407 at Riverside Towers. It's worth probably $800,000 now, and I could live anywhere. But this apartment represents something. It's where I started over. It's proof that I won. Sometimes, late at night, I think about my previous life, about the girl who signed away her apartment because she was desperate for love, about the woman who stepped into traffic because she couldn't bear the loneliness anymore. and I think about how one impossible second chance changed everything. I don't know why I got to come back. I don't know if it was magic or divine intervention or some quantum fluke. I don't know if deserved it, but I didn't waste it. Last week, I drove past my old family home, Dad and Cheryl's house, the place where I grew up and was slowly erased. It's owned by someone else now, a young family with kids. They've painted it cheerful colors and put up a swing set in the yard. It looks happy. I'm glad. That house deserves happiness. As for me, I'm happy too. Not because I destroyed my family, though I did, and I won't pretend I'm sorry about it. I'm happy because I built something. Because I proved to myself that I was worth more than their neglect suggested. Because I took every ounce of pain they caused me and transmuted it into success. They tried to make me small. Instead, I became vast. They tried to take what little I had. Instead, I built an empire. They tried to make me believe I was worthless. Instead, I proved them wrong. And when they came crawling back, when they needed me, when they finally realized what they'd thrown away, I evicted them from my life as thoroughly as I evicted them from Unit 3 to 12. Some people might call that cruel. Those people have never spent years being told they don't matter. They've never been second best in their own family. They've never been so ground down that death seemed like a relief. I called it justice. I call it boundaries. I call it self-respect. And I call it the sweetest victory I've ever known. My name is Elena Rodriguez. I own Riverside Towers and 11 other buildings in this city. I employ 100 people. I donate to charity. I sponsor students. I live in the apartment my sister tried to steal, and I am happy. I am so incredibly, impossibly, defiantly happy. And that is the best revenge of all.